The fake tanks supported the fake army. Every inflatable hull, every wooden frame draped in painted canvas, and every hollow shell of a truck was positioned with the calculated precision of a master painter. These were not merely decoys, they were brushstrokes in a masterpiece of misinformation. To a German reconnaissance pilot flying high above the English countryside, the landscape of Kent and Sussex appeared to be teeming with the machinery of war. They saw the glint of sunlight on what they believed were steel turrets. They saw the deep ruts of heavy treads in the mud tracks painstakingly carved by Allied soldiers, using weighted rollers to simulate the passage of heavy armor. These visual cues were the anchor for a much larger narrative, a physical manifestation of a threat that existed primarily in the minds of the German High Command. The fake radio traffic supported the fake army. In the quiet rooms of the Signals Corps, operators worked tirelessly to weave a digital ghost. They didn't just broadcast random noise. They simulated the complex rhythmic heartbeat of a massive military organization. They transmitted orders for fuel deliveries to non-existent depots. They sent requests for leave for soldiers who didn't exist. They even mimicked the specific fist, the unique typing style of individual radio operators, ensuring that if German intelligence was listening, they would recognize the familiar patterns of established units. This invisible symphony of data created a sense of scale and urgency that no physical decoy could achieve on its own. It suggested movement, logistics, and the chaotic preparation of a force ready to strike at any moment. The intelligence reports supported the fake army. This was the most delicate layer of the web, managed by the double-cross system, through a network of double agents, men who the Germans believed were their most trusted spies, but who were actually working for British intelligence. The Allies fed Berlin a steady diet of confidential leaks. The most famous among them, Joan Pujol Garcia, known by the codename Garbo, managed a sprawling fictional network of 27 subagents. He sent hundreds of reports, each one carefully vetted to ensure it aligned perfectly with the visual and radio evidence. When Garbo reported that a specific division was moving toward a certain port, the fake radio traffic would confirm it hours later, and the fake tanks would appear in the new location shortly after. It was a closed loop of confirmation that made the lie feel more real than the truth, and the supposed presence of Patton supported the entire story. To the German generals, George S. Patton was the quintessential American warrior, aggressive, unpredictable, and brilliant. They could not conceive of an invasion that did not feature him in a leading role. By placing him in command of the fictional First United States Army Group, the Allies weren't just giving the Phantom Army a name, they were giving it a soul. Patton's very reputation acted as a force multiplier for the deception. His presence in southeast England served as the ultimate proof that the main blow would fall on the Pas-de-Calais. The Germans were so focused on the man they feared that they became blind to the massive preparations happening further west. Then came June 6. The long-awaited dawn broke over the coast of Normandy, not with the silence of a secret, but with the thunder of the largest naval bombardment in history. Thousands of Allied ships emerged from the morning mist, a steel forest stretching as far as the eye could see. American, British, Canadian, and other Allied forces threw themselves against the concrete teeth of the Atlantic Wall. The air was thick with the scent of salt, cordite, and the heavy weight of destiny. To the soldiers on the beaches, this was the main event. This was the culmination of years of training and sacrifice. But in the grand strategy of the war, the battle on the sand was only half of the story. Something remarkable happened inside the German command structure during those first critical hours. As reports of the landings in Normandy flooded into the headquarters of the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, a strange paralysis took hold. The German commanders did not immediately abandon the possibility of another major attack. They looked at the chaos in Normandy and saw it not as the main invasion, but as a diversion, a clever feint designed to draw their reserves away from the real target. The ghost of Patton still loomed over the Pas-de-Calais, and the fear of his phantom army held the German panzers in place. They still feared Pas-de-Calais. Even as the Allied beachheads in Normandy expanded, the German 15th Army, a massive force of elite divisions, remained stationed in the north, waiting for an invasion that would never come. Hitler himself was hesitant to release the armored reserves, convinced that the real blow was still to land. The deception had done its job with terrifying efficiency. The Allies had created uncertainty at exactly the moment when Germany needed certainty. In the life-and-death gamble of D-Day, the Allies had managed to hide an entire ocean of steel behind a curtain of air and canvas. This is where the deception became truly dangerous. The Allies didn't simply need Germany to believe the wrong thing before D-Day. They needed Germany to keep believing it afterward. The first 24 hours were critical, but the first 24 days were decisive. If the German commanders had realized Normandy was the main attack on the evening of June 6, they could have redirected hundreds of thousands of troops and hundreds of tanks to crush the Allied foothold before it could be reinforced. The beachhead was a fragile thing. A thin line of men holding onto a sliver of France, so the Phantom Army remained important. The threat of FUSAG continued to suggest that another massive Allied assault was coming. For weeks after the initial landings, the double agents continued their work, sending frantic messages about second waves and impending strikes at Calais. They explained that Normandy was merely a distraction to pull the German defenses south. The German High Command, trapped in the logic of the story the Allies had written for them, kept their best troops idle in the north. They were fighting a war against a ghost. And the ghost was winning. The genius of Operation Fortitude wasn't one inflatable tank or a single clever radio broadcast. It was the entire story. It was the way every piece of information, no matter how small, pointed toward the same inevitable conclusion. The Allies understood a fundamental truth about human psychology. We are most easily deceived when the lie confirms what we already believe. The Germans believed the invasion would come at the shortest crossing point of the Channel. They believed Patton would lead it. The Allies simply gave them the evidence they needed to keep believing it. Visual evidence, radio evidence, human intelligence, and military movements, all of it worked in harmony. Individually, each piece might have been questioned by a skeptical analyst. A fake tank might be spotted as a decoy. A single radio message might be dismissed as a mistake. But together, they created a convincing picture that was impossible to ignore. It was a multi-dimensional puzzle where every piece fit perfectly, leaving no room for doubt until it was far too late. The German intelligence machine, famous for its cold efficiency, had been turned into an unwitting accomplice in its own destruction. And perhaps the most incredible part is that this wasn't some improvised battlefield trick. It was a carefully constructed information operation, planned with the same rigor as the physical invasion itself. Thousands of Allied personnel, from actors and set designers to mathematicians and career spies, contributed to a story designed to manipulate the enemy's understanding of reality. They weren't just fighting with bullets and bayonets. They were fighting with perception. They were building a labyrinth of shadows and mirrors that led the German army into a dead end. The Germans weren't simply fighting Allied soldiers. They were fighting information. They were fighting a narrative that had been woven into the very fabric of their strategic planning. On the eve of D-Day, information became another battlefield, one where the terrain was made of thoughts and the ammunition was made of secrets in this silent war. The Allies proved that the most powerful weapon in a general's arsenal isn't always the one that makes the most noise. The Normandy invasion is remembered for ships, soldiers, aircraft, and brutal fighting. We remember the courage of the men who scaled the cliffs of Pointe du Hoc and the sacrifice of those who fell in the surf of Omaha. But behind that invasion was another battle, fought in the shadows and across the airwaves, a battle fought with deception, where the stakes were the lives of hundreds of thousands of men and the future of the free world. The Allies created an army that Germany could see, hear, and believe in. They built a force that occupied the minds of the enemy's greatest generals and paralyzed their most powerful divisions. It was an army of ghosts, led by a legendary general, positioned at a gateway that did not exist. An army that was never really there, yet changed the course of history more effectively than many real ones ever could. That was Operation Fortitude, the greatest lie ever told, and the secret victory that made the liberation of Europe possible. If you found this exploration of history's greatest deceptions fascinating, consider joining our community. Like this video to help others discover these hidden stories, and subscribe to stay tuned as we continue to uncover the incredible strategies and unsung heroes who shaped our world. What other hidden chapters of history would you like to see us explore? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, keep looking beneath the surface of the stories we think we know.